Princess of Wales have rolled up their sleeves to give back to UK communities following King Charles's coronation. Joined by their children, it marked an important milestone for Prince Louis in particular.
What began as an ordinary school visit quickly spiraled into royal drama when a teacher openly mocked Princess Catherine right in front of young Prince Louis. The room fell silent, jaws dropped, and tension filled the air. But instead of anger, Catherine responded with a calm, commanding grace that left everyone, teachers, parents, and even the press, utterly speechless. Her words were sharp, dignified, and unforgettable. What exactly did she say? And why is this moment being called one of her most powerful yet? Stay tuned as we reveal the full story. The royal disrespect. It all started on a chilly Thursday morning in early March, one that seemed perfectly ordinary at first. Princess Catherine woke before dawn, the palace halls still wrapped in silence. She tiptoed to the kitchen and made herself a warm cup of tea, enjoying those rare quiet moments before the rush began. By 6 a.m., she was already dressed, her chestnut hair cascading smoothly over her shoulders, her eyes fixed on the day ahead. It was supposed to be a simple routine: get the kids to school, then head to a meeting with her early childhood development team. But fate had something else in store. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and little Prince Louis all attended Thomas's Battersea, a short drive from Kensington Palace. Despite their royal titles, Catherine and William insisted on keeping things as normal as possible for their children. No fuss, no special treatment, just the daily rhythm of family life. By 7:15, the family quarters were alive with soft footsteps and sleepy chatter. Catherine double-checked Charlotte's reading assignment, helped George with his tie, and made sure Louis's jumper wasn't the one with strawberry jam from yesterday's breakfast. Louis, the youngest, was full of questions and giggles, bouncing from one foot to the other as his mother gently reminded him to wear matching socks. William kissed them all goodbye at the door, cup of tea in hand, and gave Louis a little wink. "Be good today, champ." Catherine smiled, bundled everyone into the car and drove off, the royal security team trailing behind. In the back seat, Louis played with his fingers, gazing out the window. "Mummy, will my teacher say I did well on my drawing?" he asked softly. Catherine turned briefly and said, "Of course, my love. She's going to be very proud." They reached the school just before 8. Catherine walked Louis inside, holding his hand tightly, his little backpack bouncing against his back. Other parents were arriving too, many of whom greeted Catherine with warm smiles and polite nods. But the mood shifted the moment they stepped into Louis's classroom. His teacher, Miss Hall, stood near the reading corner, arranging picture books. She glanced up as they entered, her eyes pausing briefly before narrowing. "Good morning, Miss Hall," Catherine said with a smile. "Morning, Prince Louis." "Morning, Your Royal Highness," the teacher replied curtly. Louis placed his bag by his cubby and hugged his mum's leg, sensing something was off. That's when Miss Hall spoke, her tone light, but her words sharp. "Louis, are those your shoes? They're on the wrong feet. We really should try harder, shouldn't we?" Her eyes then turned to Catherine. "Perhaps you could help him learn basic dressing skills. It's the little things that matter." A silence fell across the room. Parents who were nearby paused, unsure how to respond. Catherine knelt and quietly helped Louis with his shoes, whispering, "Don't worry, sweetheart. You're doing just fine." But Miss Hall wasn't finished. "Some parents are so busy saving the world, they forget their children need help putting on their shoes." Catherine rose, her smile still intact, but her voice clipped. "Thank you for your concern. I'll remember that." She kissed Louis's forehead, gently squeezed his hand, and turned away, her heels clicking down the hallway. And yet, the emotional pain from the incident didn't stay behind. It followed her out the door, especially when the mockery didn't end with Louis's shoes. But what happened next left even the school staff speechless. Could Catherine stay silent any longer? Stay tuned. Catherine held back. Tears. The soft hum of the engine filled the silence as Catherine sat alone in the back of her car. For a moment she didn't move. Her hands rested gently in her lap, but her eyes were closed tightly, as if trying to shut out the morning's sting. Then, slowly, she drew in a long breath, one meant to calm nerves, to gather strength, and reached for her phone. "Good morning, ma'am," her secretary answered quickly. "Please confirm today's schedule," Catherine said, her voice level but distant. "You have a 10 a.m. meeting with the early years team at Kensington Palace, then a video call with the National Portrait Gallery just after noon." "Thank you. I'll be there shortly." By the time the car pulled through the palace gates, it wasn't even 9 o'clock. Catherine walked swiftly through the halls, nodding at staff, but her mind was elsewhere. She entered her private study and sank into the chair by the tall window. Her fingers brushed against the edge of her notebook, but she wasn't thinking about reports or conferences. All she could picture was Louis, standing there this morning, confused, maybe even hurt. The words echoed again, fresh as if she were still standing outside the classroom. "Some parents don't prepare their children for school properly," the teacher had said, loud enough for other parents to hear. And even though Catherine had stayed composed in the moment, inside, she had frozen. Louis had looked up at her, eyes wide, not quite understanding the jab, but sensing something was wrong. Her phone rang. William. "Hey, everything all right?" he asked, his tone lined with concern. "There was something odd at school this morning," Catherine said, then told him what the teacher, Miss Hall, had said. There was a pause. "That's out of line," William replied firmly. "Do you want me to speak with the headmaster?" Catherine hesitated, then shook her head, even though he couldn't see it. She walked into her early years meeting a few minutes later with a composed smile, going through project plans, campaign outlines, and mental health initiatives. She nodded thoughtfully, offered feedback, but inside, the image of Louis's confused face wouldn't fade. Just before noon, the meeting ended. She remained seated, glancing through briefing notes when her phone lit up. It was a message from Louis's teaching assistant. "Good morning, Your Royal Highness. Just letting you know Louis participated in story time and shared his toy airplane with Freddie during break. He's been smiling all morning." Catherine smiled gently. Her little boy always tried to be cheerful. But that didn't erase what happened. Teachers could discipline children, yes. But to speak with such disregard in front of others? It wasn't only about Louis anymore. It was about dignity, respect, and the message it sent to other children watching. She joined the call with the National Portrait Gallery team, discussing exhibition schedules and patron programs. Her voice was calm, steady, almost too perfect. But underneath, the sting of the teacher's words ran deep. She had to address it, but with caution. A single misunderstood word could explode into tabloid fire. After the call, Catherine stood at the window again, the view of the palace gardens blurring as her mind turned over every angle. Confronting a teacher as a royal wasn't simple. It could be seen as interference, intimidation. But staying silent would mean letting that moment go unchecked. She picked up her phone, heart racing slightly. But before she could dial, her lunch was brought in. She sat at her desk and ate quietly, not really tasting the food, already imagining how that conversation with the headmaster might unfold. By mid-afternoon, Catherine entered the small reading room, notes in hand for her upcoming speech on early childhood education. But as she read, her thoughts drifted again to the expression Louis wore when he heard Miss Hall's words. He didn't cry, but his silence had said enough. At 3 o'clock, her calendar buzzed. Pickup time. She stood, slipping into her coat, deciding to fetch Louis herself. The schoolyard buzzed with laughter and chatter. Some parents nodded politely, others whispered. Then she spotted him, Louis, bouncing on his toes, but his smile fading slightly as he caught sight of her. She knelt as he ran to her. "How was your day, sweetheart?" He paused. "Miss Hall said you forgot to comb my hair." Catherine froze for a breath. Then her voice, soft but firm. "That's not true, my love. You looked perfect, just the way you are." As they walked to the car, Louis told her about building with blocks and a song they sang in class. But the shadows hadn't lifted entirely, and Catherine knew. This wasn't just about a snide comment. It was about how her son had been made to feel. And with that weight on her chest, she reached for her phone once more, this time ready to make the call to the headmaster. But what exactly did she say, and how did the school respond? Stay right where you are, because what happened next left even the teachers in stunned silence. The call Catherine never wanted to make. They got home just before 4 p.m. The moment they stepped in, the palace halls echoed with laughter and running footsteps. George and Louis quickly changed out of their school uniforms, grabbed a football, and dashed out into the gardens, where William was already waiting. Charlotte wasn't far behind, throwing on a sweater and jeans before joining the game. From her study window, Catherine stood silently, watching them play. The cool breeze swayed the trees, and Louis's giggles carried across the lawn. He looked happy now, but earlier that day, things hadn't been so bright. Catherine stepped away from the window and picked up her phone. She had waited long enough. After a moment's hesitation, she called the school. The receptionist's polite voice soon gave way to Mr. Jonathan, the headmaster. Her voice was calm, but every word had weight. She explained what had happened that morning, how Miss Hall, in front of other children and parents, had commented that some people send their children to school without even brushing their hair. Louis had looked at her with confusion in his eyes, clearly unsure whether he'd done something wrong. Catherine wasn't angry, but she wasn't going to let it slide either. "A child should never feel embarrassed," she said gently but firmly, "especially not by the very people meant to support them." Mr. Jonathan was quiet, then responded with sincerity. He assured her he understood the seriousness and would speak to Miss Hall personally. He apologized and promised to make sure it didn't happen again. Catherine thanked him and ended the call. She didn't feel triumphant, just a bit lighter. She hadn't shouted or blamed. She had simply stood up for her son. That evening, the family gathered in the living room. Catherine sat helping George with his history homework, while William read a storybook aloud to Louis, who clung to every word, wide-eyed and cozy in his pajamas. But something still lingered. When the story ended, Louis turned quietly and asked, "Mummy, did I do something bad today at school?" Catherine looked at him, her heart twisting. She pulled him close. "No, my darling. You were perfect. Sometimes grown-ups say things they shouldn't, but you did nothing wrong." Louis nodded slowly, resting his head on her shoulder. When William asked how the call with the headmaster went, Catherine replied softly, "He listened. He was kind. He promised to speak to Miss Hall." William gave a small nod. "Good. No one should ever make Louis feel small." Catherine agreed, but just as she began to feel a little peace, the next embarrassment by the same staff would shake her even deeper. But this time, was it just a careless mistake or something far more personal? Keep watching. Catherine stepped in to protect Louis. Friday morning started just like any other. Catherine woke up early as usual, moving quietly through the halls of Kensington Palace while the rest of the house slowly came to life. She laid out breakfast, helped the children with their uniforms, and braided Charlotte's hair, while Louis chattered happily about a puzzle he had almost finished the night before. Louis was unusually bubbly that morning, humming as he tied his shoes, with a little help, and double-checked that he hadn't forgotten his toy plane, which he had promised to show Freddie during break. As they reached the school gates, Catherine spotted Miss Hall standing across the courtyard. The teacher noticed them too, but instead of smiling or offering a polite nod, she turned abruptly and began shuffling papers, as if deeply focused on them. Catherine caught the movement and raised an eyebrow. Louis, unaware, ran ahead with a grin, greeting his friends. Thankfully, Miss Green stepped forward with a warm smile. "Good morning, Your Royal Highness," she said, crouching to speak kindly to Louis before greeting Catherine with a nod of genuine respect. After a few pleasantries, Miss Green stepped aside and quietly made a phone call. A few minutes later, Mr. Jonathan, the headmaster, came out to meet Catherine. He looked sincere, if slightly nervous. "Your Royal Highness," he began, "I want to apologize again for what happened yesterday. I assure you, we are addressing it with the seriousness it deserves." Catherine gave him a calm but measured smile. "Thank you, Mr. Jonathan. I'm not looking for drama, just kindness. For all children, not just mine." After hugging her children goodbye, she watched them walk into the school building. Louis turned around to wave one more time before disappearing inside. As Catherine drove home, her mind stayed busy. She wanted to believe Miss Hall's earlier behavior had been a one-time mistake. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe something personal was going on. But her reaction today, avoiding eye contact and acting cold again, left Catherine with a sinking feeling. This wasn't about a bad day anymore. It felt like something else. And it felt aimed. Later that afternoon, Catherine returned to pick up the children herself. As she approached the gate, Louis skipped up beside her, clutching a picture he'd drawn of an airplane. Then, unexpectedly, Miss Hall stepped directly into their path. Her tone was cold and flat. Perhaps Louis should focus more on listening during story time. He seems easily distracted. Catherine paused. Her expression didn't change, but the warmth in her eyes cooled. "Excuse me," she said quietly but clearly. "You don't speak to children like that. If you're having a hard time, talk to someone. Don't take it out on a 5-year-old." Miss Hall blinked, stunned. She hadn't expected that kind of calm strength. A nearby parent who had overheard stepped closer and said, "I think you owe her an apology." But Miss Hall turned without a word and walked away, her face red. A teacher nearby rushed off toward the headmaster's office, and the air around them thickened with tension. And in the moments that followed, what came next wasn't just shocking. It revealed the apology by the staff and the kindness of Catherine. But was it genuine? Or just too late to undo the damage? Stay with us. The apology that changed everything. It wasn't long after the incident that Headmaster Jonathan asked Miss Hall to step into his office. His voice, usually warm, carried a firm edge this time. "Miss Hall," he began, folding his hands on the desk, "I've received several reports about your recent conduct. This can't continue. Is there something going on you'd like to share?" Miss Hall hesitated. Her shoulders dropped slightly as she exhaled. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "It's been difficult at home lately. I've been carrying a lot, and I guess it's started to slip into my work. I didn't mean to take it out on anyone, especially not the children." Jonathan's expression softened. "I understand that life can weigh heavy sometimes," he said gently, "but it's crucial we don't carry that weight into the classroom. Maybe it's time to step back and reset?" Miss Hall nodded slowly, her eyes tired. "Yes, I think a few days off would help." They agreed on 2 days of leave. That same afternoon, Jonathan called Princess Catherine. He apologized again and explained everything Miss Hall had shared in confidence. Catherine listened quietly, letting his words settle. Then, with sincerity, she asked, "Is she all right? Does she need help?" The headmaster was surprised, not by her kindness, but by how quickly her concern shifted from her son's embarrassment to the teacher's well-being. Catherine's tone wasn't just that of a protective mother. It was someone who had seen suffering, who recognized its signs. "If there's anything I can do," she continued, "I'd be happy to help." While Miss Hall took time off, Catherine kept to her usual rhythm, preparing breakfast, doing the morning school run, and attending to her charity work. Louis seemed lighter, more playful again. The air felt a bit clearer. By Monday, Miss Hall returned. That morning, Louis was cheerful. As Catherine helped him with his socks, he told her he was going to read the longest sentence in class and not even mess up once. When they arrived at school, Catherine noticed Miss Hall standing by the doors. The tension of last week seemed to have melted. She stood straighter, composed. As Catherine and Louis approached, Miss Hall stepped forward. "Good morning, Prince Louis," she said, kneeling slightly. "I owe you an apology. I spoke out of turn last week. You did nothing wrong. You looked wonderful. And you're very smart." Louis blinked in surprise, then offered a small smile. "Okay," he said shyly. Then Miss Hall turned to Catherine. "Ma'am, I'm truly sorry. I wasn't myself. I let my stress cloud my judgment." Catherine nodded, her voice warm. "I appreciate your honesty. And more than anything, I appreciate you seeing Louis." She paused, then reached into her handbag and handed Miss Hall a small white card. "This is my direct contact. If you ever need someone to talk to or support of any kind, please don't hesitate." Miss Hall looked down at the card, a bit stunned. "I think I do need help. I've felt lost lately." A few days later, Catherine quietly arranged for Miss Hall to be connected with one of the royal family's supported mental health organizations. It offered private counseling and support for teachers and parents under emotional strain. Miss Hall began attending weekly sessions, and slowly, she started finding her balance again. Later that week, Catherine was reviewing her notes for an upcoming event when Louis knocked gently on the study door. In his hand was a small, lumpy envelope decorated with scribbles and dinosaurs. Inside was a thank you note. He had written himself, "Dear Miss Hall, thank you for saying sorry. I like reading now." On Monday, Louis carefully packed a little treat box of homemade muffins, 6 total, 2 with sprinkles. Catherine tied it with a soft, blue ribbon. As they arrived at school, Louis held the box like a treasure. At the door, he handed it to Miss Hall. "These are for you and the class," he said. Miss Hall's eyes watered. "You're a very kind boy," she whispered. Catherine watched the exchange quietly, her heart full. Louis was growing, not just in height, but in empathy, strength, and grace. But do you believe Princess Catherine handled the situation with grace by staying calm instead of reacting harshly to Miss Hall? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.